Revenge films.
My name is Damien. I live together with my wife, Emma, and our daughter, Emily. I was living an ordinary life raising our daughter like how most families do. However, as our daughter grew up more and more each day, something kept bothering me, and I kept thinking about it 24/7. That something was the fact that our daughter didn't look like me at all. We didn't have any similar physical features. I didn't want to doubt my wife at all, but no matter how I tried to convince myself that I was just imagining things, the reality was that our daughter didn't look like me at all. I worried and worried and worried even more, so I secretly took a DNA test to clear my doubts once and for all. The results stated that the possibility of Emily and me as parent and child was infinitesimally low. My mind suddenly went blank, and I didn't know what was happening to me. The very first thing that came to mind was that my wife might be cheating on me. That's the only reason that I could think of at the time. My wife and I had been living together since before we got married. However, no matter how much I thought about it, I didn't think my wife had the time to betray me. Where could she possibly get the time to do that? I thought. When she was still working in a company, she always came straight home, and even after she resigned from her previous job and started becoming a full-time housewife, she always picked up the phone promptly whenever I called her, no matter what time of the day it was. So there was no way that my wife had time to do that. When I thought about all that, I couldn't believe that my wife would have the time to cheat on me, or even have an affair for that matter. But how could this possibly be? Why did my daughter not look anything like me? However, according to the medical professionals and the DNA test results, it was proven that Emily was not my daughter. I had no idea what to do, so I thought I was going to be bald from stress. But whatever the truth was, I knew that I needed to know and face the truth. So I put on a brave face and decided to ask my wife about it. It was Saturday the next day, so it was my day off. My wife suggested that we go out together as a family and have some fun, but I told her that there was something serious that I needed to talk to her about. Emma probably noticed that I wasn't showing my usual attitude, so she silently sat on the chair and waited for me to speak. I then started talking about how our daughter didn't look like me at all, and I also told her how I worried and worried and worried even more, so I secretly took a DNA test to clear my doubts, once and for all. The results stated that the possibility of Emily and me as parent and child was infinitesimally low. My wife was even more shocked that our daughter was not my child, instead of being defensive for being suspected of having an affair. The way she was shocked was very unusual. I realized that my wife didn't have an affair, or anything close to that.
Is that really the result of that DNA test? Are you 100% sure that the DNA test is accurate?
Yes. I went to a trustworthy institution, so I'm sure of it. But looking at your reaction, I can tell that you didn't betray me. I'll ask this question just to make sure, but you didn't betray me, right?
Of course! I would never do such a thing. I never even thought of that, even once. If you don't believe me, let's go to that medical facility together and let's get a DNA test together. I can't believe that Emily is not our real daughter. I carried her in my belly for 9 months and I went through a lot giving birth to her. If she's not our daughter, whose daughter is she?
That's what my wife told me, and I thought that she was right. I knew for certain DNA test results were accurate. But if that was the case, whose daughter was Emily? My wife and I discussed different possible scenarios. We thought that there might have been a mix-up at the hospital, but then my wife said,
I will take a DNA test too, because this was a mistake by the hospital. Emily might not be related to us by blood. If you think about it this way, if Emily is not your daughter, then there's a high probability, too, that she's not my daughter either.
You're right about that. I guess we should both take DNA tests to make sure. A happy home turned upside down. My wife also took a DNA test. We were very schooled when the results came in. It turns out that Emily wasn't Emma's daughter either. We expected that to be the result, because it was the only possible scenario that made sense. However, when she saw the results with her own 2 eyes, she was so shocked that she collapsed on the floor and cried. we were now faced with another set of important questions. Where was our real daughter? And whose daughter was Emily, really? Where were her real parents? When my wife and I found out that our daughter was not our real daughter, we asked around for possible explanations. The first place we went to ask was the hospital where my wife gave birth to our child. The doctor told us that it was not possible for them to mix up the babies. Of course, they properly checked as well, but unfortunately for us, it wasn't the hospital's mistake. But if that's the case, when and where did we get separated from our child? My wife and I were worn out because of this mysterious disappearance. On the other hand, we were afraid that Emily, our daughter who we previously raised together for 4 years, might be forcefully taken back by her birth parents. We didn't think we could return her to her real parents. I was so afraid to know the truth of the situation, but I was also very worried that our real child might be in danger. When I thought about the possibilities that our daughter might be in, I was worried so sick that I couldn't just stand there and do nothing. We talked to our parents and our relatives about the situation. When I asked for their help, despite thinking that they ought to judge me, our efforts were not meaningless because we learned a shocking truth that led us to the answer of our daughter's disappearance. To cut to the chase, we learned that the culprit of the disappearance of our child was my cousin Veronica. Veronica gave birth to her baby half a year before my wife gave birth to our baby. However, my wife at that time wasn't doing well after giving birth to our baby. She needed to stay in bed for some time, so she had to stay at the hospital for about half a year. Both my parents were working, so I couldn't ask my mother to help me with raising my daughter. Then my cousin Veronica, who was living near our house, volunteered to take care of our daughter while I was at work. Honestly speaking, I was very busy at that time with work and managing the household, so I was pretty exhausted all the time. I was clearly in need of some help. That's why I decided to take her help, and I made sure that I paid her properly for her help. I didn't know it at that time, but my cousin apparently replaced my child with hers. My aunt knew about what Veronica did, but she was worried that if she revealed what her daughter did, she was afraid that the cops might arrest her daughter. That's why she thought that if my wife and I didn't realize what her daughter did to our child, there was no need for her to tell us. I was furious from the bottom of my heart for what my aunt did, or I guess I could say, for what she didn't do, which was reported to us about the misdeeds of her daughter, but more importantly, I wanted to talk with my cousin. However, the nightmarish situation didn't end there. According to my aunt, she hadn't been in contact with her daughter for years now. That's why she told us that she didn't know how our real daughter was doing now. Any inkling of hope disappeared from my mind, and all I saw was darkness. Of course, I was filled with despair and rage. I wanted to blame my cousin and aunt for what happened. But first and foremost, I wanted to know and make sure that our real daughter was still alive and well. My wife and I then continued to search for our real daughter, with the help of every agency that we could rely on. Not long after we started looking for her, we found my cousin living in a different state. When my wife and I went to my cousin's new residence, my wife was so filled with rage that she lost herself for a second, and she grabbed my cousin with such strength that I didn't know she had. Mothers truly are very protective when it comes to their children. I somehow managed to calm my wife down. I then asked my cousin where our real daughter was, and also to enlighten us about why she swapped our daughter for her daughter. Apparently, my cousin had epilepsy, and because of that, she had to take medicine for her illness. My cousin shared that at that time. She took the medication according to the doctor's instructions. One of her friends told her that since she was taking medication, she might give birth to a child with defects. As her child was born and grew up, she was afraid that she might be told one day that her daughter had a disability. That's why her genius plan was to exchange her daughter for our daughter, because they looked quite alike in her eyes. Even I was going crazy because of my cousin's very selfish reasons. However, my cousin was the only person who knew where our real daughter was. That's why I endured the situation like swallowing a needle. Then, when I asked my cousin about our daughter's whereabouts, she told us that when she got divorced from her ex-husband, since the child was not her real daughter, she didn't want to raise her anymore. So as a result, she called her ex-husband to take our real daughter with him. My wife couldn't take it anymore and started grabbing my cousin by the arm again. but I calmed her down by saying that we should prioritize looking for our daughter right now. We could deal with my cousin later. Then, after contacting my cousin's ex-husband, Mr. Johnson, we learned that he didn't realize that our daughters were swapped. Now that we knew everything that happened, we searched for my cousin's ex-husband and contacted him. When I told him everything we discovered, Mr. Johnson told us that he also had been thinking about how his daughter didn't look like him at all. No similar features whatsoever. So we immediately set up a date to meet together with our daughters. Then the day we would meet our real daughter finally came. My wife and I brought with us the daughter that we raised, while Mr. Johnson brought with him our real daughter, who he raised. When I saw her, I could tell that our real daughter was raised very preciously. When we saw our grown daughter for the first time in forever, we embraced her, and we couldn't hold back our tears. But to our real daughter, we were strangers, so she ran to Mr. Johnson and clung to him.
Go away! I'm scared!
It was sad to hear those words, but I understood where she was coming from. But my wife and I were very happy to see our daughter alive and well. Seeing his real daughter, who looked like him, Mr. Johnson couldn't hold back his tears either. He then looked at us and said, "Thank you very much! Thank you so much!" All the parents cried tears of joy, while the children were confused about the adults shedding tears. We all shared the joy and happiness of reuniting with our family. After that, we exchanged our contacts, and we met up every month to keep updated on each other's daughters. We also had sleepovers for our children, so that our kids would interact with each other more. On the other hand, my wife and I, together with my cousin's ex-husband, sued my cousin and my aunt for what they did to our families. My cousin argued, saying,
"No one is unhappy as a result, so there's no need for this. Why am I the villain here? I just swapped them. What's the problem with that? They look alike anyway. You can't tell 10 differences."
She strongly interjected, and I couldn't see any signs of remorse or reflection for her actions. However, she not only ruined the lives of the children, but she also changed our lives, including that of her ex-husband. As a result, my cousin was found guilty and charged a huge amount of alimony, an amount so huge that she wouldn't be able to pay it off even if she worked her whole life. As for my aunt, the rest of the family and extended family cut off relations with her. She also became excluded from receiving inheritance of property from my grandparents. As a result, my cousin ended up going back to her hometown. She's carefully monitored by her family, while she works day and night to pay off the huge amount of alimony. From now on, my cousin will probably only continue living to pay off her debts. It's almost like a miracle that our daughter, who was swapped, is happily living in a safe and comfortable environment, thanks to my cousin's ex-husband's proper care. As for my cousin, who made an unforgivable misdeed, we plan on making her pay for the rest of her life.
My name is Ashley. It's been a couple of years since I got married to my husband, Michael, and we also had 2 children and a dog. We were able to purchase our dream home, and I was living happily with my beautiful family. One day, I was caught up in the most ridiculous, stupid scam, and this is a story from that time. I have been using the exact same email address since I was a student, and one day, out of nowhere, I received an email from my ex-boyfriend to that email address. When I opened it up, I was shocked at the contents of it. In the email, my ex-boyfriend claimed that I had borrowed money from him in the past, and he was demanding that I return the money after all of these years, and that I had been running away from him. I had no idea what this email was talking about, and for a moment, my mind was full of question marks and confusion. So, since I didn't know what he was talking about, I simply replied that I hadn't borrowed any money from him. But his response was that he let me borrow money and he insisted on it. Not only that, but he also started saying that I needed to pay back all of the money that I had taken directly out of his wallet. I, of course, had never once taken any money out of my boyfriend's wallet. And to be honest, my ex-boyfriend wasn't such a money-hungry person to begin with. So I was even more confused. That's when I decided to send an email to confirm whether it was actually him or not. But the response that I received was that he had proof that I had stolen the money from him, as well as records of the money that he loaned to me. He started saying that he wouldn't mind going to the police and turning me in, and he started to threaten me, and that was when my suspicions reached the maximum point. And that's why I replied to just send me the details and to send me his bank account information as well. But then, when he sent me the documents, it said $30,000, and the bank account that was sent over was in fact under my ex-boyfriend's name. But I still found the situation to be way too suspicious, and I could only think that my ex-boyfriend's personal information and identity had been stolen, and that this was all part of a scam. That's why I went to the police and I informed them of this entire interaction. The reason why I didn't call him directly was because he was my ex-boyfriend, after all, from many years ago, and I don't want to be in touch with him. My ex-boyfriend from that, named Jonathan, was a pretty good-looking guy, and he was popular. He had really high communication skills, and he had held a high education level as well as a high-paying salary and a good job. I know that a lot of women around him were also after him. And on top of that, he himself knew very well that he was popular, and in the end, he was cheating on me with another woman, and that's why we broke up. He really hurt me, and that's why I didn't want to get in touch with him whatsoever at this point. But he was also very generous with his money, so that's why I was even more confused why he would hold this over me after all of these years. I debated whether to talk to my husband about it or not, but I also didn't want my husband to think that I was still in touch with my ex-boyfriend and to misunderstand the situation, so I decided not to say anything and to simply wait until I heard back from the police. But it didn't take long for them to get back to me, and I was shocked to find out who was behind those emails. It turns out that it was actually my ex-boyfriend's wife, Karen. The reason why she was sending me these emails was because she had used up all of the household living expenses. Of course, my ex-boyfriend had a high-paying job and was receiving a good salary, so there should have been more than enough money inside of his account. However, she had been using that as much as she wanted and chipping away at it, and yet it still wasn't enough. So she started taking out loans left and right and had borrowed money from multiple sources. And then, she must have realized that if her husband found out about it, then she would be in quite a lot of trouble, and this was a scam that she came up with to try to cover up her tracks. When it comes to this ex-boyfriend, I can understand, because he had a good salary and a good face, and was handsome. So apparently, he had been going out with multiple women, and within those women, there were many that were only dating him because they were after his money. And his current wife knew that Jonathan still had the contact information of many of those women. And so, just like she had sent that email to me, his wife started sending emails to any woman that she could find in his contact information that she knew he had history with. And when she sent the same emails to them, apparently there were some women that actually sent the money into the account. In reality, like I mentioned before, Jonathan was always quite generous with his money, so I can only imagine that there must have been some women who he actually, in fact, did lend money to. And then, when his wife got a taste of women who actually did send money into the account, she started contacting more women, one after another, to try to collect as much money as she could. But given that we were adults and everybody had their own lives now, after breaking up with Jonathan, many people were already married or already engaged. If they were sued over money like this, it would become a big problem, so many women gave in and simply made the deposit, which meant that Jonathan's wife was getting more and more money collected. Eventually, she found my email address, and that's why she contacted me. However, because I reported the whole incident to the police, everything that she had been doing was exposed. And of course, Jonathan found out about everything that was happening and was furious. Apparently, Jonathan was super shocked that I received an email like that from him, but he was actually even more shocked that I was married with children now. I received a message from him apologizing for his wife's actions, and in order to discuss what actions to take next, and we made plans to meet. I was going to be seeing Jonathan for the first time in years, but thankfully his wife didn't come, and Jonathan was the only one that showed up to the cafe. When Jonathan saw me, he tried to make small talk, talking about how many years it had been since we last saw each other. But to me, I didn't care about any of that. I just wanted to hurry up and finish whatever discussions needed to happen and leave as soon as possible. Of course, he did apologize to me, but I don't know what Jonathan was thinking because he suddenly started asking if we could exchange phone numbers and stay in touch. But I immediately declined and went home after the business was finished. I later found out that in the end, Jonathan's wife was in fact arrested. And not only that, but she was charged and found guilty and sentenced to prison time. I wasn't actually a victim in the end, so I didn't really care what happened to her or them, as long as I wasn't involved anymore. But I found out that somehow my ex-boyfriend's ex-girlfriends had all become connected somehow, and they all found out that it was Jonathan's wife that was collecting the money from them. They got in touch with each other, teamed up, somehow organized it together, and went to the police as a group. And the number of women was a whooping 30 women. And the amount that Jonathan's wife had collected from them was actually close to $100,000. Within that group of women, apparently there were some women that had never even dated Jonathan, and the fact that his wife tried to threaten them for money was particularly bad. But as for why that woman ended up depositing the money, apparently Jonathan's wife had put a lot of pressure on her, threatening her and telling her that if she didn't pay the money, she was going to regret it and that she would get hurt. And so she ended up paying $20,000. However, I didn't think I was a victim, but the bigger problem came a few days later. After we finished our meeting, I didn't want anything to do with Jonathan, but apparently he didn't think that his wife was actually going to get arrested and sent to prison, and he panicked. It turns out that my ex-boyfriend actually had a child about the same age as my daughter. I was just thinking about deleting his email address and contact from my phone when I received another email from him. And that was asking me for childcare services. When I read the email, it was so selfish. Jonathan said that he was going to get a divorce from his ex-wife, but that because his parents had already passed away, there was nobody that would be able to care of his son. However, because he was busy with a full-time job and needed to work, he also wasn't able to look after his child. The email went on that Jonathan would come to pick up his child on the weekends, but until his ex-wife got out of prison, that he wanted me to raise his child. As if such an idiotic request would ever go through in this day and age. Despite it being a ridiculous request, I was also confused as to why he made the request to me. We haven't been in touch for many years now, and I was amazed that he would be able to ask such an outrageous thing out of me. When I saw the email, my jaw dropped to the floor, and I honestly was at a loss for words. It was obvious to me that my ex-boyfriend's wife was a strange and terrible person, but I felt like this made clear to me that my ex-boyfriend himself was also a strange and terrible person. That's why he sent that request to me. I tried to politely decline, saying that I wouldn't be able to do that. But then he got pissed off and started yelling at me, saying that I was the one that said I loved kids, and asking if I only cared about the well-being of my own child and was going to let another child have a bad life, and called me a terrible person. He's the one that's terrible, though. He was trying to leave raising his own child in the hands of another person, and I couldn't believe the words that he was saying. I didn't want to deal with him anymore, so I simply replied to him, "Please take responsibility for your own life," and ended it there. Immediately after that, I deleted his email and blocked it, so I would never have to be in touch with him ever again. Because the whole incident turned out to be a much bigger deal than I thought, I also had to deal with the police investigation in the aftermath of the incident. In the end, my husband did find out about what happened, but his only response was that he was worried about me. It didn't turn into a big deal between the two of us, and I was thankful. But in that case, I wish I had told my husband everything from the beginning, and I wish I had brought him with me when I had to go and meet my ex-boyfriend at the cafe. Because I went by myself, he probably thought that he could take advantage of me. And it terrifies me to think that maybe my ex-husband thought that he'd be able to start over with me as a secret to my husband. After dating so many women until now, and also having all of the contact information for those women despite getting married, I could totally see him being like that. Because he had always been so popular with women, he probably thought that any woman would feel lucky to be with him if he invited them back into his life. Seriously, what a pain. But very luckily, the only way that my ex-boyfriend and I were still connected was via email. And because I didn't tell him my phone number or my address or anything like that, I don't think I would have to be in touch with him ever again. As for our mutual friends that we were both still in touch with, I already told them about the situation with him and his wife, so they know not to tell him, and I don't think he would find out where I live. If anything, they were all disgusted by him, and they would probably ignore him even if he contacted them anyway. I never could have imagined that I would get roped into a situation like this by an ex-boyfriend who I hadn't spoken to in years. But to be honest, to me, he was part of my past that I wanted to forget, and I felt relieved that I was finally able to cut off all ties with him. After the whole incident, I heard a rumor from one of our mutual friends that Jonathan did get a divorce from his wife. However, she refused to sign the divorce papers and was already in prison, so the divorce was in limbo. And it turns out that his company found out about the situation, and they are considering firing him or relegating him. It wasn't like my ex-boyfriend himself did anything in this case, but to be honest, I don't feel any pity for him, because he got himself into this situation. My name is Hannah Williams, 29 years old. 1 year ago, I got married to my husband, Jonathan, and we live together in a rented apartment. We don't have any children yet. I first met Jonathan on a dating app, and that's how we started our relationship. Because we were both looking for a partner to marry, we only dated for about 3 months before we got engaged and then married. It was a really fast marriage, but that turned out to be a huge mistake. I'm not sure that all marriages need to be after dating for a long period of time, but I learned painfully from this experience that if you don't spend a good amount of time together, it's difficult to know whether you are a good match for each other or not. Little by little, as we started to live together, I had more experiences where I realized that Jonathan and my personalities didn't get along well, and any romantic feelings between the two of us started to disappear. Thinking back now, I honestly don't know why I got married to him, and I deeply regret it. But at that time, I got carried away, and I was so excited to meet somebody that also wanted to get married that I was blind to Jonathan's true nature. But I think that he and I had our differences from the beginning, and very soon after we got married, our relationship went to hell. That being said, it's not like we were screaming at each other every single day. It was more so that Jonathan was harassing and abusing me in the most insidious ways. The one I especially hated is how he started telling me that I had no presence and insulting me, taunting me any chance that he could. Even when I tried to talk to him, he would ignore me completely, or he would purposely blow his cigarette smoke right into my face, or bump into me. Whenever I would get upset about that and say something, his response would always be,
You have no presence, and you're like a rat in this house. I didn't even know that you were there.
And then he would laugh in my face. But I didn't want to argue with him anymore, so I felt like I had no choice but to bite my tongue and tolerate it. But my stress levels every day were indescribably high. I felt like I was walking on thin ice in my own home. However, at that time, I didn't have the thought to divorce him straight away. We had just gotten married, and I thought that maybe there would be an opportunity for us to start fresh. And even if we were to get a divorce, I would have to find somebody new again, and all the different scenarios were going through my mind. But then one day, an incident occurred that broke the camel's back, and I could no longer tolerate this anymore. It happened one day when it was time for dinner. Our kitchen wasn't very big, and it was so tight that if you're not careful, 2 people in the kitchen meant that you would be bumping into another. At that time, I was putting boiling soup into the bowls, and just as I was about to bring them over to the dining table, Jonathan and I bumped shoulders. It wasn't rare for Jonathan to purposely bump into me, because he was always doing that on a regular basis. And on that day when that happened, it was very clearly on purpose again. However, when that happened, the hot soup spilled onto Jonathan's feet.
Ouch! That's so hot! What the hell are you doing?
What do you mean, what am I doing? You're the one that purposely bumped into me. This was your fault, Jonathan.
Excuse me? Ugh, you gotta be kidding me! Damn it!
Jonathan quickly went off to the bathtub to go and put his feet under cold water. But apparently, when I told him that this was his fault at that moment, apparently those words really rubbed him the wrong way. Starting the next day, he started using those exact words and harassing me in even more terrible ways. At first, they were small. When I was in the bathroom taking a bath, he turned off the lights on me. Or, if I was watching TV, he'd grab the remote and start flipping through the channels. If it was childish little things like that, they had happened a lot until now, so I was somehow able to tolerate them. But then, things escalated. Anytime we would pass each other in the hallway, he would purposely full body bump me and then say,
Oh, I didn't see you there. You have such a little presence that I didn't notice. But that's your fault, isn't it?
If I was sitting on the living room sofa, he would throw a cushion at my face and then say,
Oh, I didn't know you were there. Couldn't see you. But that's your fault for having no presence, isn't it?
And his abuse started going from verbal to actual physical harassment. However, if I did it back to him and he became even more violent towards me, I didn't stand a chance against him. so I felt like the only thing I could do was to tolerate it. But then one day, as I was sitting in the living room watching TV, I suddenly felt a searing, burning sensation down my back. Ah! That's so hot! Ouch! I panicked and immediately turned around. But standing there was Jonathan, holding a cup of instant noodles in his hand and grinning from ear to ear.
Oh, you were sitting there? I couldn't see you. But that's your fault for sitting there, isn't it?
My entire back was burnt, and that was the final straw for me. I couldn't take it anymore. Knowing that I wasn't going to do anything back to him, Jonathan used that comfort, and his abuse towards me only continued to escalate. After this incident, that was when I finally decided that I was going to get a divorce. However, I couldn't accept that he was getting to do whatever he wanted to me, and I just had to take it. I wanted to get revenge, so in order to get back at him, I started to come up with a certain plan. For that, I needed the help of my older brother, so I called him. My brother Kevin was a construction worker, but he was pretty big and tough, and on first glance, a lot of people were scared of him. He was the key to making this plan work. What I asked of him was to come over to my house on the following Sunday, dressed as a moving company worker. Because Jonathan knew what my brother looked like, I asked him to come in a disguise so that he wouldn't be able to tell that it's my brother. Oh, and also if you can, I'd be grateful if you can bring a couple of the guys from your workplace with you. If possible, the scarier looking they are, the better.
That's all fine, and I can arrange it. But why? What's going on?
That was when I told my brother all about the revenge plan that I had come up with. And when I was done, my brother was cracking up.
I see. That's a great idea. In that case, I'd be happy to help you, and I'll bring my boys with me.
He said, and so the plan was being put into action. I bet Jonathan wasn't ready for this. I hired a cleaning contractor for today, by the way.
Huh? What are you talking about?
We have a lot of trash piled up in the kitchen, so I just thought I could take it all out at once. And since it's going to be a lot, I figured it'd be easier to just call a contractor to do it for us.
Whatever. That's fine. But you better not touch my things and keep your dirty hands off my stuff. Hello. We're here to take out the trash.
The doorbell rang, and just as I had asked, my brother showed up in disguise. He had a towel wrapped around his head and sunglasses on, and he even had a fake beard on his face, so I didn't think Jonathan would notice. Standing behind my brother were 3 other guys, all quite big and very scary looking. Jonathan didn't seem interested in the slightest bit, and he didn't even look up as he lazed out on the couch. Well then, now it was time for the plan to be put into action. I couldn't wait. Thank you for coming. Well then, I'm sorry for the trouble, but can you please start in the living room over there? And I showed them into the living room. My brother knew exactly what to do and said,
Yes, ma'am. We're on it. All right, you guys, let's go.
And he raised his voice.
Hey, you better be careful with that. All of my little figures inside are going to fall over. Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, I'll be more careful. No! Ah! You're stepping on my foot! Get off! Oh, you were there? Sorry, I didn't see you there. But, hey, what the hell do you think you're doing?
Oh dear, you were sitting there? You have no presence, mister. I didn't even know that you were in the room.
And in this way, my brother and his crew were messing with Jonathan using the exact same words that he was always taunting me with. And I truly felt redeemed from the bottom of my heart. However, eventually Jonathan was reaching his limit, and he exploded and raised his voice.
You idiots! That's enough already! You better cut this out!
That was my brother's cue. And this time, my brother raised his voice and yelled right back at Jonathan. He took off his disguise and in a booming voice said,
You're the one who better cut this crap out! What? Wait, Kevin? What are you doing here? You've got some nerve messing around with Hannah like that all this time. Boys, take out this trash. What? What are you doing? I'm telling you to take out the trash. Did you not hear me? But I thought you're telling me to take out the trash, right? You're the biggest trash of all. So hurry up and take out all of your things and show yourself out. Didn't you hear me? Now hurry up and get moving. The truck is parked outside, so put everything in there. What? My stuff? My stuff? What are you talking about?
That was when I finally chimed in and delivered the final blow. I'm getting a divorce from you. We are done, so hurry up and get out. Surrounded by my brother and his 3 giant guys behind me, Jonathan had no choice but to do exactly as he was told. My brother and his guys didn't budge. They simply watched over Jonathan and forced him to pack up his things and leave the house.
It's so heavy! Hey! What are you doing? Taking a break. Hurry up and carry it out! But it's all so heavy! There's no way that I can carry this by myself! Oh, maybe you're hungry and you need to eat. Why don't we make him a cup of boiling hot noodles?
Oh, that's a great idea. And then I'll pour it all over his back.
I'm moving! Everything's in the truck. All right. Well then, let's get going. What? Get going where?
We pushed Jonathan into the car and drove the truck straight towards his parents' house. When we got there, I exposed all of the terrible harassment I endured from him to his parents, and we had them both take Jonathan and his belongings. Of course, when his parents heard all of this, they were furious.
What kind of a man abuses a woman like that? You're the worst! I can't believe this! A bastard like you is no longer my son! Hurry up and get out! You better not leave your things on our property either! Carry it all and get off my lawn!
What? Come on! I had to carry it again?
I'd been recording all of the harassment that I had endured, so of course I was able to get a divorce, and I was able to receive a settlement fee. To this day, I'm really grateful to my brother and his friends for their help. My name is Maureen. I live together with my husband and our son who is in kindergarten. I'm an ordinary part-time worker. I work part-time only in the morning, so I'm quite active on the PTA at my son's elementary school. I'm very close with the other mothers in the PTA. I always look forward to going out to lunch and drinks together with the other mothers. One day, before the school's parent-teacher recreation the following month, it was decided that an aerobics instructor will be invited. It was us, the mothers of the PTA, who were assigned to invite the aerobics instructor. A close mom friend of mine in the PTA mentioned that she knows someone who is an aerobics instructor, so I asked Natalie to invite her acquaintance. We decided to hold a meeting to discuss about how we were going to go about the recreation, so we borrowed one of the classrooms in the school and gathered. The parents in the PTA cooperated by thinking of different plans. It's a difficult task with a lot of planning and organizing to do, but it was all worth it, so I didn't mind the hassle. As me and the other moms became united and we started preparing for the event, I felt like our bond grew stronger. However, something kept on bothering me the whole time. Karen, who is one of the mothers in the PTA, didn't join the meetings and preparation. Karen has a large family. She's a mother of 6 children, so everyone knows her. She is a little famous at the school. Karen is not only famous because of having many children, but she is also very famous for being stingy and cunning. When the parents of the PTA had lunch together to discuss an important issue, she went home without paying for anything. It is still very fresh in my mind. Because of that, everyone didn't like it when she showed up. That is why no one in the PTA really liked her. At first, I tried to understand that she can't always join meetings because she has 6 children and she is very busy. However, she ignores important messages on our group chat. She also never really showed up during any of the meetings, so I started getting irritated by her actions. Then, on the parent-teacher recreation day, as a result of everyone's effort in carefully preparing for the event, the recreation went off without a hitch. All the parents and the children had a blast enjoying aerobics together. Filled with a sense of accomplishment, we decided to gather everyone who helped make the event a success, to have lunch together in order to celebrate the fruit of our hard work. When I informed everyone through the group chat about the celebration, as well as a date on when I plan to hold it, Karen, who has never joined any of the meetings and who never helped in any of the preparations for the event, replied to my message saying that she will join the party. What's even worse is that she also said, "The party will be counted as an expense, and it will be taken from the funds of the PTA, right? So there's no need for me to bring any money, right?" Karen replied like an entitled idiot. I responded saying that we will be paying for our own food, so please make sure that you bring money. Karen never replied to my last message, so the other members of the PTA were turned off. However, I couldn't tell her not to join the party. The day of the party finally came. On the day of the party, I arrived before the appointed time at the restaurant called Italian, where we made a reservation. 5 minutes before the party was scheduled to start, everyone in the group arrived aside from Karen. I told her that we will have to pay for our own food, so I thought that Karen decided not to join the party. We all felt relieved that Karen will not be joining us, so we started the party according to schedule. However, while I was happily enjoying lunch with everyone, I suddenly received a call from Karen.
Having a party at an Italian restaurant is the best. I'm already done eating, so I'll leave ugly with the check. Thanks in advance.
I didn't understand what she was saying, so I just said to her, we already started the party. Karen suddenly went silent, and then a few seconds later, she started to panic.
Huh? What do you mean? You're with the rest of the members right now?
Yes, that's right. I'm with everyone right now.
What? But I don't see any group of people in this restaurant. Could it be? Oh my god. Did I come to the wrong restaurant?
When Karen realized that she went to a different restaurant and ate there, she was shaken, and she suddenly hung up the phone. I don't know why she called because she didn't really make sense, so we didn't really think much about the conversation, and we continued enjoying the party instead. However, about 20 minutes after Karen hung up on me, Karen arrived at the restaurant where we were having a party. I was surprised to see her in a very shaken state, so I asked her what happened. To my utter surprise, and everyone else's, Karen started yelling at me, barking like a dog in front of everyone. She said something outrageous that shocked everyone in the restaurant.
I was expecting you to pay for the bill, so I didn't bring any money. Give me $500 to pay for all the food that my family ate. Right now. Hurry up.
I told you to bring money to pay for your own food, didn't I? When I calmly said that, Karen was even more enraged.
It's just normal to count the food bill of the party as an expense, to be taken from the funds, am I right? Stop making excuses and hurry up and give me the money. We already ordered and ate all the food, so I'll be trouble if I don't pay the bill at the restaurant.
Everyone in the restaurant was confused and didn't know what to do. The Karen's demands with outrageous reasons.
If we all divide the bill, it won't amount to much. The restaurant is already waiting for the bill to be paid. I'm in a hurry, so give me the money as fast as possible.
No matter what I tell her, Karen never backed down. Seeing how Karen is behaving, everyone in the restaurant refused to give in to her crazy request. After a little while later, she probably realized that she won't be getting any money from us, so she stomped her way out of the restaurant, irritated. After the party finished, I stood up from my chair to pay the bill, but to my horror, I couldn't find my handbag anywhere. I'm definitely sure that I brought my handbag with me, and I remember placing it on the chair. I searched for my handbag in haste, but I couldn't find it anywhere near where I thought I placed it on, so I decided to ask one of the staffs about my missing handbag. To my surprise, I found my handbag sitting on an unusual spot. It was on the sofa near the entrance of the restaurant. To make sure that everything in my bag is there, I opened the bag to check it. I didn't notice anything unusual at first, but when I opened my wallet, I realized that all the money inside disappeared. It was empty. I was planning to pay property tax that day after the party, so there was about $1,000 inside my wallet. When I told the staff and other members of the PTA who joined the party, they advised me to report what happened to the cops. So I decided to stop by the police station on my way home from the party. When I explained what happened to the police officers, I was advised to file a damage report because of the amount of damage that was huge. The police officers started investigating the incident. The culprit soon became clear. When they checked the security cameras near the restaurant where we had a party at, a video of Karen running as fast as she could from the restaurant with a wad of cash in hand was recorded by the security cameras. I immediately realized what happened. Karen stole money from my wallet in order to pay for her meal, even though we are both mothers and we send our children to the same elementary school. There is no way I can forgive Karen for what she did. After that, Karen was arrested by the police for theft. The motive for theft was to pay for the meal that her family had at a very expensive restaurant. Karen was having financial difficulties, so she not only stole money to pay for the meal, but also to pay for other expenses in her family. She stole all the money in my wallet for selfish reasons. Her husband repaired me the money that Karen has stolen, but when I thought about how a thief is living near us, I became very worried and scared. Karen was released after the end of the detention period, and then she and her husband came to our house to apologize for Karen's unforgivable behavior. Apparently, Karen's husband had no idea that she paid their meal with stolen money. Her husband probably scolded her so much because that woman who used to be so loud and opinionated was very silent and looked like she had nothing to say, not even to defend herself, which she always does. Then, with a haggard appearance, Karen finally looked to me and uttered words of apology. But when I couldn't accept her apology, she started to fall down to her knees, and she lowered her head to the ground, bowing as if she truly meant it. I stopped her and said that she doesn't need to do that. She started to make several excuses while crying.
I have 6 children! Including my husband and me, 8 people need to be fed in this family. So as you can see, we are not financially stable. That is why I thought of taking advantage of the opportunity by joining your lunch party and having you pay for it.
When I heard her say all those excuses, the first thing that came to my mind is how she never helped in any of the preparations for the event. I further told her that it's too unfair for her to join the party when she didn't do anything to make the event a success. Karen had nothing left in her arsenal of what to say back.
If the school finds out about this, my children will have to transfer to another school. So please, don't tell anyone about this. I beg you, please.
All right, I won't tell anyone about this, but the other members of the PTA know about it, so I'm sure that what you did has already spread like wildfire.
But...
Are you out of your mind? What have you done? What if we end up having to move out of here? We don't have any extra money to move out!
I know that just as well as you do. That's why I'm trying to stop it from spreading.
It's too late for that now!
Karen and her husband started quarreling in front of our house, so I asked them to go home and take their problems with them. After that, I received calls from Karen again and again, which was so annoying, so I went ahead and blocked her. After that, the rumors spread like wildfire, just as I expected. Because of that, Karen couldn't stay in the same place anymore. It was not only affecting her, but her actions also affected how her children were treated by the other kids at school. The rumors also spread across the neighborhood, so she realized that she can't continue living in this town anymore. Her family was forced to move out of their house. They had to live in the province, away from all the people who knew of her rotten personality. As for her husband, he had to resign from his work, and he has another job near their new residence. According to rumors, I heard that since Karen has a huge family, and her husband couldn't find work near their new place, they apparently went bankrupt in their new house. No one knows what happened to them after that. I was very shocked and traumatized by having my money stolen, that I nearly couldn't trust anyone anymore. But thanks to my friends who supported me and helped me feel safe, I stopped thinking too much about what happened anymore. I'm sure there will be times in the future where it will be inevitable that I will have to deal with nasty people, but I need to be very wary and careful around people like Karen.
My name is Jonathan. When I was in elementary school, I was abused by my homeroom teacher. That teacher was a man named Mr. Harrison, and he was in charge of our class. I was still a little elementary school kid, and I couldn't understand why my teacher hated me so much. He was always only picking on me, and every day at school was a nightmare. For example, during class, he would call on me, and only me, for the most difficult problems, and tried to make me solve them in front of the entire class. Of course, I wouldn't be able to, and he would always make me stand in the back of the class. This happened almost every day. He would also call me stupid in front of the entire class, and the rest of the kids would laugh along with him. I really hated Mr. Harrison. Amongst all of his abuse, the most psychologically painful incident was when one day there was a big commotion that one of the students was missing an envelope full of money. As everybody in the school was looking for it, all of a sudden, Mr. Harrison said in front of everyone that I was the one who took it, and he made me stand in front of the student body. And then Mr. Harrison said to me, "Take off all your clothes right here, right now, in front of everybody, and prove that you don't have it." I was shocked by what he was asking me to do in front of so many people, and so I shook my head and tried to say no. However, I was still in elementary school, and to a little kid like me, I couldn't go against what a teacher was demanding me to do. So I had no choice but to take off my clothes in front of everybody. I was down to my underwear, and they checked everything, including all of my pockets. But of course they didn't find anything, because I hadn't stolen the money at all. Even if I was still a young kid, of course there were girls in the school standing there, staring at me, and I was so embarrassed that I wanted to run away on the spot. But instead of apologizing for making me strip off all of my clothes, the teacher instead laughed at me in front of everybody. And then with a smile on his face, he said, "You can go back to your seat now, Jonathan." That was all he said, and he never apologized for it. After that, they ended up finding the envelope of money deep in the bag of the student that thought she lost it. Ever since that day, I was never able to forget the trauma of that experience, and I grew up to become an adult. What actually happened was that I was so embarrassed after the incident that I was no longer able to go to school. I couldn't tell my parents what happened to me either, but when I got to middle school, I chose to go to a slightly farther one. Because I was able to go to a different school with different students, I was able to enjoy school again. And I got through high school and also graduated from college. Nobody knew about what happened to me in elementary school, and I was able to have a normal college life. When I graduated, I moved out of my hometown and I got a job at a company. But back home, my parents were still in the same hometown. So over the holidays, I would always go back to see them. But other than that, I stayed away from the hometown. However, 3 years after I had moved away, my father hurt his back and was unable to move. He said that there were things that he needed to do for work no matter what, so I felt like I had no choice but to go support him. I explained the situation to my company, and I went back home to spend a month with my parents. My father was the owner of a convenience store, and because I used to work there part-time, I had a pretty good understanding of all the work that needed to be done. Of course, because I also knew how to do the accounting and everything, I ended up taking over from my dad and doing all of his work while he was unable to move. And then, right around that time, as I was walking around town, I realized that the local elections were happening. However, when I saw the photo of the person running for office, I was shocked! To my disbelief, that teacher that had abused me back when I was in elementary school had resigned from being a teacher and was running for the local government office! Opposite the poster that I saw, Mr. Harrison himself was there, putting on a show for the local community. I instantly hid behind a pole, and I watched as Mr. Harrison was smiling and showing affection towards those around him. He started saying that when he was a teacher, he was popular and loved by all of the students. He said that the classroom was always filled with laughter, and that he loved raising the next generation. When I heard that, I wanted to throw up. I never wanted to see him again in my life, nor did I want to get involved, so I ran away from the scene. However, it was right outside of the convenience store, so I could hear all of the election campaign comments, and to be honest, it was traumatizing. I was of course worried about my father's well-being, but if this is what I was going to have to deal with, to be honest, some days, I wished I hadn't come home. One day, my former teacher's election campaign staff came into my convenience store to buy lunch. At that time, there were other staff members around, and I became worried that Mr. Harrison himself might come in. So I left the shop to my staff, and I ran to the back office to do some computer work. However, from the office, I could overhear their conversations. As it turns out, apparently, Mr. Harrison's former students were going to be giving speeches to talk about what kind of a person Mr. Harrison was in one of the big lecture halls in town. At the time, I was wondering who on earth would want to give a speech about a person like that, and I went on with my work. But a few days later, I was asked to make a delivery to a certain place. Apparently, my dad would make deliveries for large orders only, and so I gathered the order, and I went out for the delivery. The contents of the delivery were multiple bottles of tea, rice balls, sandwiches, bento boxes, and juices. It was a huge order, and for our shop, we were grateful for the business. However, when I arrived at the delivery site and walked in, I quickly realized that this was the lecture hall for that teacher and for this speech-giving event. I wanted to run away from the spot as soon as possible, and I looked around for the person who was going to pay for this delivery. But then, I heard a voice.
Hey! What the hell are we going to do now?
It's out of our control. Apparently, he's in the hospital because of food poisoning or something like that.
I don't care what the situation is. It's almost time for the student to give their speech. What are we gonna do? This is the biggest event!
I overheard Mr. Harrison's staff having that conversation. It seemed like the person who was meant to give the speech today was no longer able to come, but that was none of my business. I was able to find the person who was in charge of the payment, so I received the money and was counting the cash when suddenly he said,
Wait a minute, isn't your name Jonathan? Jonathan, and you went to Scott Elementary School, right?
What? Yes.
Well, that's perfect! Hey, can you give the speech? Actually, the student who was supposed to give the speech for Mr. Harrison today had to go to the hospital and couldn't make it last minute.
That's what he said to me. But he must be joking. Why on earth should I have to give a speech for someone like that after everything that he did to me? Besides, I only had memories of being bullied by him, so what kind of speech would I have to give anyway? That's how I thought, and I was going to leave, but then I realized that this might actually be an opportunity. Mr. Harrison had no idea that I was there, or that I had that idea, and he was simply continuing his preparations for the election with his team. However, as he was getting prepared for the event, he walked over to do a final confirmation with the student who was supposed to give the speech. And then when Mr. Harrison saw my face, he instantly turned pale.
Jonathan? What are you doing here?
What do you mean? I heard that former student who was supposed to give the speech today is in the hospital with food poisoning or something like that. So they asked me to step in his place.
What did you say? But you...
Yes, me. I thought about saying no, but since this is such a wonderful opportunity, I decided that I would give the speech today, so that I can tell everybody what you did to me and what kind of a person you really are.
Wait a minute! If you do that, it's going to be a huge problem! You don't need to give any speech, so please, just leave!
Mr. Harrison was desperately trying to kick me out of the venue, but of course he was. However, the lecture hall was already full of people waiting for this speech from his former student. While he was panicking, one of his election staff members came over and gestured to me.
We're ready for you, Jonathan. So, please, go ahead up on stage.
And pointed towards the stage, but Mr. Harrison panicked even more.
No, he can't! This guy definitely can't go on stage!
What? But he's one of your former students, isn't he? It's going to be fine. He himself said he was happy to fill in. And it's a much better impression than to have no speech at all. He can just speak from his own words and experiences. Okay, they're ready for you.
As she said that, they showed me up to the podium in front of hundreds of people. It was too late. If Mr. Harrison tried to stop me now, it would be strange. But he desperately didn't want me to go up there, and he was flustered. When I got to the podium, everybody had their attention on me, and they welcomed me with big applause. I politely bowed, and I proceeded to introduce myself. I first explained that Mr. Harrison was my homeroom teacher back when I was in elementary school, and immediately from there, I exposed all of the horrible memories that I could possibly remember. But then, I could hear that the audience was starting to buzz, and the staff was shocked. I could see Mr. Harrison out of the corner of my eye, completely pale, with his head in his hands. The staff tried to get me to come down from the podium, but I continued to say everything that the teacher did to me, until the very end of my speech. But then, from the audience in the lecture hall, I started to hear voices that sympathized with me from left and right, and then, more and more, people started booing at Mr. Harrison. After that, Mr. Harrison's reputation and the community trust in him went straight to hell! And of course, he lost the election. Not only that, but the fact that he was bullying me back then was exposed to hundreds of people, and Mr. Harrison was being bashed by the community. Because they all knew where he lived as well, apparently, some of the community members went to protest at his house, angry at him for betraying their trust. Because he was running for the local government office, his face was of course famous around the town. However, after his true nature was exposed, he was no longer able to go outside or walk around anywhere without somebody recognizing him and bashing him. I heard that he ran out of town in the middle of the night, never to be seen again. As for me, after I gave this speech, people found out that I had been bullied by my teacher, and people started to recognize me as well. But since I was only home for a limited time to help my dad after he hurt his back, as soon as I left, I no longer had to hear anything about it. Well, when my parents heard what Mr. Harrison had done to me, they said that they were going to sue him. But it had already been many years, and I felt like I was finally able to get my redemption from him. So I was satisfied. After he lost the election, Mr. Harrison tried to get a job, but after I exposed his bullying, he wasn't able to get hired by any school. I heard that he's now working part-time jobs and living in a tiny apartment to try to make ends meet. Because he had become somewhat of a celebrity, I heard that now he's having to hide his face and live a sad life. Take that, Mr. Harrison! Ever since I was bullied so much in elementary school by my teacher, all these years, it had left a deep scar inside of me. But this time, after a series of coincidences, I was able to serve him with karma. and I felt a huge weight lifted off of my shoulders.
How was today's video? If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Stay tuned for more.